Just how close are the Denver Broncos to being considered true Super Bowl contenders? Did the Nuggets really deserve that level of backlash from the national media after resting their stars against Golden State? And yes, we have another special guest coming up to help us continue our countdown of the 30 biggest storylines in Colorado sports over the last 30 years as a part of our Mile High Milestones signature series. All things to come on today's rundown, but I want to begin in the NFL, where, as we all know, the Denver Broncos are coming off of a surprising, in some ways, resurgent season where they finished 10-7 with a wild card loss to the Buffalo Bills, ending their streak of losing seasons after the 2016 season and kind of catapulting them back into relevancy both in the AFC West and amongst their NFL peers. But how close are they now that we feel more confident going into Bo Nix's sophomore season about the trajectory of this NFL team? How confident are we that they're on the path to becoming Super Bowl contenders? Well, Pat Surtain did a one-on-one interview recently, and he seems pretty darn confident. In that interview, he said, quote, "We built this team up for the right reasons to reach that step. So we'll see, but I'm very optimistic about our future in reaching the Super Bowl." Patrick Surtain obviously be coming off of a season in 2024 where he won Defensive Player of the Year for his individual efforts. And for most of that season, Denver's defense was at or among the top of the league in major statistical categories as well. So with Bo Nix at the helm, continuing to grow in year two under Sean Payton, at what point do we start to consider them genuine Super Bowl contenders? They were a wild card team this year, maybe caught a handful of green lights to get there that they may not catch during the 2025 season. But if you factor in that Bo Nix isn't going to have a 4-game stretch to start his career that was in some ways historically bad, that they maybe have a little bit of a leg up or a head start in terms of momentum in that direction. I think that it may be a little early to call the Denver Broncos Super Bowl contenders right now in 2025. But I don't think if things go the way that they should or the way that one would hope for the Broncos that we're that far off. You've got a rookie contract window with Bo Nix, including a 5th-year option, that gives you about 4 more seasons before he's got to be paid a significant amount of money and will be amongst the top, if not at the top of the league, when he's due for a contract extension, because that's how it works with quarterbacks in the NFL. So you've got a window here. Is that window wide open? Probably not. But I would think with the additions that they made on the defensive side in free agency thus far with Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw, assuming health, that's a pretty significant bolstering to something that was already a strength in the Broncos in terms of their defense. You add in Evan Ingram to be a Joker-type piece for Sean Payton to move around his chessboard and to give Bo Nix another option to explore other areas and exploit other areas of the field that he hasn't been able to do with the likes of Adam Troutman and the laundry list of tight ends, Nate Atkins, that have come through this past season. Marvin Mims, maybe Cecil Lammey likes to call him the Riddler, maybe the outside version of the Joker, whereas Evan Ingram's going to operate primarily in the slot or closer to the line of scrimmage. Marvin Mims can operate further on the outside, and who knows, maybe there's a Teneroa McMillan or another Emeka Ibuka or a receiver in the draft that we aren't even factoring in yet. On the offensive side of the ball, I would expect a step forward. We think they're going to address the running back room and make some additions there. 2025, maybe not a Super Bowl contender, but to Patrick Surtain's credit, I think if we're not having those conversations in 2026, 2027, toward the back end of Bo Nix's rookie window, where you're going to have to start clearing up some money to pay for your quarterback, maybe we underperformed in those years. So all in all, pretty exciting, in my opinion, in terms of how we're speaking about the Denver Broncos in 2025 compared to how we spoke about them in 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. The Denver Nuggets, how we're speaking about them, and by we, I guess that's the royal we, the national media speaking about the Denver Nuggets after their last week or so of games, a much harsher tone. Tim Bontemps, who's one of ESPN's lead basketball voices, he was featured on Get Up, the popular morning show roundtable hosted by Mike Greenberg. And he had some comments about the Denver Nuggets that I found a little bit jarring, to be frank. When asked about the Denver Nuggets sitting their starters against the Golden State Warriors, Tim Bontemps said, quote, "It's a horrible look for the league, and it's a horrible situation because I was excited to see what I could learn from Golden State playing these guys. Instead, they have everybody out, and even though they lost, the game doesn't matter." Okay, I want to dissect two different parts of that response, but I will start by saying this. I don't know that for Tim Bontemps, there was a more wrong way to be right than he was with the comments that he made about the Denver Nuggets on Get Up. And what I mean by that is this. I think Tim Bontemps' contempt for the situation, or his complaint about the way the Nuggets chose to rest their starters against the Warriors, on the surface is fair. But the way he went about it, with his comment saying it's a horrible situation for the league and it's a horrible situation to be in, because he wanted to learn about the Warriors in the way they would play those guys. That was the first part of his response that I took exception to, because A, that tells me right off the bat, you weren't actually looking to learn things about Denver. You wanted to see how the Warriors, the Bay Area team in the larger state of California, the West Coast bias, how they would look against a team like the Nuggets, who are among the top of the teams in the conference, and there may be a playoff matchup there. So your contempt for the Nuggets and you're blaming the Nuggets for this situation is more about what you lost for your observation of Golden State than it is about what you didn't get to see from the Nuggets. And then the back half of the quote there where he says, even though they, the Warriors, lost, the game doesn't matter. What do you mean the game doesn't matter? They lost to a team that was filled with backups in the starting lineup. The Golden State Warriors, playing their stars, lost to a team that started Hunter Tyson that night, okay? You're telling me you can't learn anything from that the game doesn't matter? Because I can promise you that's not how I, and I'm sure a lot of people here around town, felt about the fact that the Nuggets almost lost to the backup Lakers without Luka or LeBron. Where was the backlash for that? By the way, sitting Luka and LeBron James and watching Austin Reeves and friggin' Bronny James try to beat the Denver Nuggets on their home court. So you're telling me there's nothing you can learn from that? That's not a concern? You didn't learn anything about the Warriors in that moment, just like we did about the Nuggets against LA? You didn't learn anything about the Nuggets, who were able to rise to the occasion despite sitting Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic and Christian Brown? And while we're on that subject, let's talk about this. You made it seem like the Nuggets were like taking a cheap opportunity to sit their stars, as if Nikola Jokic hasn't been dealing with lower body injuries and elbow soreness, and a guy that gets beat up to the degree where the backs of his arms look like he got in a fight with a Wolverine. The scratches and the blood and the physical nature with which he plays, especially offensively in the paint, you're going to fault him for that? You're going to fault Jamal Murray, who just 48 hours prior rolled his ankle in a pretty nasty way to the degree where he had to go back to the locker room and decided to come back into the game against the worst team in the NBA and play productively and try to win that game? You're going to fault the Nuggets and Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic for that? Aaron Gordon, who's been battling injuries the entire time, plays that game and has a career game for him as a Nugget. But you're going to make it seem like that's the level of contempt that we've held for, teams load managing. You took an issue that the NBA does have, and you made the Denver Nuggets bizarrely the face of it when they're the exact opposite in reality of the issue that the NBA is facing. Nikola Jokic's availability in primetime NBA games is north of 90%. If you want to have a fault or you want to have criticism for the Denver Nuggets, Tim Bontemps, what you should have come out and said is you sat your guys for the wrong game. If they really wanted to, they could have sat their stars against the Wizards, one of, or if not the worst teams in the NBA, and said, hey, we'll trot out Russell Westbrook and Aaron Gordon and Jalen Pickett and we'll try to beat that team, a lesser team, and we'll save our guys for Golden State and we'll save our guys for LA. If that's the argument Tim Bontemps had gone on ESPN's Get Up and made, I would have been like, you know what? That's fair. I don't think that Michael Malone and the Denver Nuggets have had the best plan of attack when it comes to spreading out the rest for their stars. When they were getting punked by the Timberwolves by 20 points, it was almost like a pseudo punishment that they were kept out on the floor in a game they had no chance of coming back from, when it was evident early into the fourth quarter that was going to be the case. They still had to slog on. So if you want to have criticism about the Denver Nuggets, it's that maybe they didn't choose the right time to rest their stars or to spread that out. But don't try to make it seem like the Denver Nuggets are the Kawhi Leonards of old, who was kind of the pioneer for this load management movement post-COVID. Don't try to tell me that these guys who have Nikola Jokic, who's been available for his big games 9.5 basically times out of 10, that all of a sudden that they're the poster child for this problem that the league has. I just took major exception with that. All right. Got that off my chest. Been sitting on that for like a day and a half. I feel better now. And because I feel better, there's no better time to transition to the next edition of our Mile High Milestones Countdown, presented by your local Ford dealers. We have been counting down what we deem to be the 30 biggest sports storylines in Colorado over the last 30 years in celebration of 30 years, the 30th anniversary, the 30th birthday of Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan, which took place this month. Today's storyline, we are into the top 20, and at number 18, we come to a team and a year and a milestone that will forever have memories in my heart as one of the more exciting seasons of Denver Broncos football I ever watched, and that was the 2013 Denver Broncos. And I'm so excited to bring in, to help us take this walk down memory lane, Super Bowl champion and former Denver Bronco, David Bruton, who was on that team in 2013. David, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to chat with us. As it relates to the 2013 Denver Broncos, if we're going to take a trip back in the Wayback Machine, this was the second year after the Broncos pulled off what, in my opinion, was at that time and could maybe still be the greatest free agent acquisition of all time, bringing Peyton Manning in from Indianapolis with all of the drama that took place with his neck injuries and the way that Indianapolis moved on in favor of Andrew Luck. The 2012 season, his first season, ended in a pretty brutal fashion. And that's kind of where I want to start, because I've never had the chance to talk to you about this. And it's something that I'm always curious about for those who have the inside knowledge. The game against Baltimore, where Raheem Moore lets the ball go over his head. You had a 35-28 lead late in the game. It's a tie ball game after that massive pass from Joe Flacco, and the game loses in overtime. And it kind of just felt like, from a fan perspective, the oxygen was just sucked out of our lungs for the way that ended, because of how much promise that team had right out of the gate. What was that loss like for you all as a defensive member of the team and as a member of that locker room?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a heartbreak, right? Like it's a heartbreak. We're up 35-28 going into that last drive, and there's this big play. You know, we're in cover two. You know, we're deep safety. You know, you never try to backpedal and jump the ball. Raheem had a good season to that point, and you know, unfortunately, kind of got that label as letting the ball go over his head, right? But things happen. It was a very unfortunate turn of events, and like you said, the air did leave the lungs out of the whole stadium, right? It's not necessarily just the defense, but the offense, special teams. You know, that in the stadium is also -20 with the wind chill. So it's like, oh goodness, we could have been done with this game, not be in the cold anymore, and be looking at the next game. But you know, we had, at the end of the day, we still had to go out there and perform and still try to get a stop and still try to, you know, let the offense score and things of that nature. It just was a very unfortunate turn of events, because the season did start off well. It started off super hot, and we had all this momentum, and we had everybody, you know, bought into Coach Fox's mentality, and everything was just like clicking, and just boom, one play just shut it all down.
Well, like I said, that was kind of this season to me was kind of bookended by, like, I guess I would call it like Sour Patch Kids moment. There's sour, but then there's some sweetness after it, because the 2013 season began with a rematch against those Baltimore Ravens. And I'll never forget being in college, I went to Michigan State, if it wasn't obvious.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. I'll never forget where I was in college watching that game where you got the rematch in week 1, and it felt like a premonition of things to come, where we watched Peyton Manning throw 7 touchdown passes, and you guys as a team just manhandle that Baltimore Ravens team. Was there a motivating factor carrying over from the 2012 offseason into that 2013 season that helped manifest that? And did you feel after that week 1 performance that this team was about to make a pretty special run?
Oh, 100%. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Anybody in that locker room who had any doubts that the offense could have done something so great and that we could have made it to the Super Bowl that year was out of their mind. They weren't in the right mindset. They didn't belong in the locker room. Like, if anybody had any doubts after that first game, they didn't deserve to be in that locker room. But that first game set the tide for the whole season, right? It's like we knew like the offense was going to score. Defense, we just had to go out there and play, get these stops necessary. Like, our offense is going to guarantee us 30-some points, right? So if you can hold somebody less than 30, you have a 99% chance to win. But yeah, everything was clicking. Like, defense played well that season. Special teams played great that season. Offense set records that season. It was just throughout the 4 quarters of the season, first 4 games, second 4 games, third and fourth 4 games, like, you just knew that we were getting hot at the right time. Like, okay, there's a little sputter here, a little sputter there. Okay, now we're just hot, and we're going into that playoff with the right mindset, the right energy. Everybody's healthy, and we're just moving forward.
Yeah, to your credit, you guys started out that year, I believe, 6-0. You had 3 50-point games over the course of the season offensively. And even in the losses, David, you guys averaged 4 touchdowns a game in the losses. Yeah. And just as a reminder for those who may have forgotten, because we're more than a decade past this particular season now, if you needed a reminder at just how dominant offensively this team was, they amassed a total of over 600 points over the course of a season, which was an NFL mark at the time and still is. 5,500 passing yards, 55 passing touchdowns. You had 2 receivers go over 1,200 yards receiving. You had a 1,000-yard rusher in Noshan Moreno, who's another friend of the station. And as far as touchdowns go, I actually couldn't believe that this was true when I was reading back on that season. You had 5 players on that team have 10 or more touchdowns. Demarius Thomas, Eric Decker, Julius Thomas, Wes Welker, and Noshan Moreno had 10 rushing touchdowns. Yeah. So just we truly may never, we hadn't seen anything like that at that time. And we truly may never see, even though it feels like the NFL slants things more towards the offense from a rule standpoint every single year, we may never see something like that again. So when you're watching that season unfold, what was it like for you as a defender and you guys as a defensive unit to know that that's what was on the other side of the ball week in and week out?
I think it was just a different mentality, right? When you look at the 2013 season, I know we're talking about 2013, but you compare it to 2015, the mindset was just so different. Like, back in 2013, it's like, okay, if we fumble the ball on our end, our offense is going to pick us back up. Was not the case in 2015. Like, okay, in 2015, we had to do the job. We had to get the job done. Yeah, the offense could score here and there when we needed them to, but at the end of the day, the defense won a majority of those games. So when we look at 2013, it's like, okay, we had something that we could fall back on. We had Peyton Manning at his the end of his prime, whatever the case, however you want to describe it. Offense is over here firing on all cylinders. It's like, okay, like I mentioned earlier, if we can hold the other team less than 30 points as a unit, special teams defense, if we can hold them to less than 30 points, we're going to win 99% of those games. Like you said, we averaged 4 touchdowns in those losses. Right. So the mentality when it came to that, it's like, okay, well, they're going to score. When we score again, we'll make sure we get a stop.
Yeah, and you touched on, again, this kind of goes to the Sour Patch Kid nature of, I think, the bookends for this year was you had this amazing season in 2013 in the regular season, you march through the playoffs, and then you get to Super Bowl 48. And in the similar way of how I asked you when Peyton Manning dropped 7 touchdown passes against Baltimore in week 1, did you feel like you guys were on the precipice of making a special run? When you saw the snap go over Peyton Manning's head to start that Super Bowl, what was the feeling on the sideline? And was it kind of the opposite maybe of that week 1 thing of like, hey, maybe this just isn't going to be our day? What was that like for you to watch unfold?
No, I think for the fans, they might have thought it wasn't going to be our day. I think here in the locker room as competitors, us on the sidelines, like, okay, cool, it happened. Whatever. It's not the first time that we fumbled the ball. It's not the first time that Peyton's had a turnover. It's not the first time the offense, put the defense in a terrible position. And we've always been able to rally. So at the end of the day, it's like, okay, the first 6 seconds, yeah, it sucked, right? But we have an offense that can, put points up. We have a mentality where we can win. We can overcome adversity. We can go out there and still put up points on the board. And slow starts have happened, and we've been able to pick it back up. So after that fumble over the snap over the head, there wasn't any real waiver on the sideline there. It's like, okay, we just got to do our job a little bit more firm and for the defense side, and we know the offense is going to be able to put something up.
You were fortunate, David, to have been a part of the 2013 season and stick around for the eventual reaching of the mountaintop in 2015. And I have maintained since Super Bowl 48 that without that loss and the exaggerated, punctuated nature of it, losing 43-8 to the Legion of Boom in Seattle, without that moment, Super Bowl 50 does not happen. John Elway at the time, leading into that 2013 season, had amassed what turned out to be one of, if not the greatest offensive units in the history of the NFL that we saw unfold in 2013. And after Super Bowl 48, when that was clearly not enough to bring home a Lombardi trophy, it, to me, signaled the move for John Elway to break that down and then rebuild one of the greatest defensive units in NFL history with the no-fly zone and the entirety of that 2015 defense. Do you see the loss in Super Bowl 48, as I do, as a catalyst that led to Super Bowl 50?
I think I agree with that just in life in general, right? You learn more through your losses. You learn more through that adversity. And, credit Elway for making that tectonic shift from an offensive mindset to let's go get some defensive guys with, Akeem, TJ, bring D Ware, re-signing Vaughn, all the things, all the pieces that fell into place there. I would probably agree with you there in that sense, like where, we did put a little bit more in the defense that next free agency. And then, you go into that 2014 season and we have the heartbreaker versus the Colts. And it's like, okay, we're still missing 1 or 2 more pieces there to kind of get us over that hump. And, you're still expecting Payton to still be the Payton of 2013, 2014 going into the 2015 season. So it's like, okay, everything's set on offense. Now we got everything set on defense. Yeah, so I'm in agreement with you entirely where that loss kind of made a shift as where the focus should be.
Thank you so much, David, for joining us. There's no way that any of us mere mortals could have filled in the context that you have as someone who was on that sideline and as a part of that defense and out on the field making plays and watching what we still to this day, many of us believe, may be the greatest singular offensive season in NFL history that we were fortunate to have happen here with our hometown team. I appreciate you joining us, and I'm sure I can find a way for us to catch up again soon as we continue our countdown on this list.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Much appreciated. Thanks again to David Bruton. While we've got a few minutes here at the end of the show, I want to make sure I get to some of your comments. So let's go ahead and fire away, Trey. I think we've got something from Ernie maybe that we can kind of get rolling here. I always love trying to maybe, if I can find a way to shut up in time to save a few minutes here, I love being able to interact with you. So Ernie says, go Broncos country, only go Bo Nix for 6. Hey, man, I'm telling you, as someone who grew up a Broncos fan, I can't express how rejuvenating it feels. And we don't even know what the story of Bo Nix is going to have when it comes to the Denver Broncos and how many pages, how many chapters are in that book, because we've seen a lot of quarterbacks swing around the carousel here in Denver since Peyton Manning, who was the subject of our milestone story here, walk out the door. But man, I haven't felt real, true, organic hope and faith and energy about a Broncos team like I had this past season in Bo Nix's rookie year. So doesn't mean that, we're guaranteed to be hoisting a Lombardi trophy in the next 4 to 5 years. But I'll tell you, I've never felt like we've had a better chance to be in that conversation since Peyton Manning walked out the door than right now. So Ernie, I appreciate the comment, man. Thanks for going on with us. We definitely on that path. I agree with you. I think that, and again, we can split hairs and parse through the timeline of it. Is it next season? Is it 2027? Is it, are we on a 5-year trajectory? And if we don't have at least one appearance, at what point does it start to become an underserve or a disappointment? We can split all those hairs. The bottom line is we're in the club, baby. We got through that velvet rope and we're in the dance. Now we've just got to make it count, and we've got to take that next step to become true AFC and Super Bowl contenders. They're a playoff team. So the expectation, the floor going forward should be a playoff appearance. And I know that Sean Payton likes to say, hey, you can't use past performance as an indicator of future success in the NFL because the game board gets shuffled around each and every year. And that's true. There's an insane amount of roster turnover. I think it's north of 30% for NFL teams every single year, especially on the back end. So there's some truth to that. But you can't entirely just throw out past performance as an indicator of what we can hope to have as future expectations. So while I agree with it, I think we're on the path as well. Victory lap. I appreciate that. Colston, Loveland, Judkins, Seth McLaughlin to pair with Judkins and D-line the rest of the draft. Hey, again, the way that the Broncos have attacked free agency with the additions of Talanoa Hufanga, with the addition of Dre Greenlaw, bringing in Evan Ingram to hopefully be Sean Payton's latest iteration of the Joker role that so much of his offense is predicated around, I think it gives the Broncos, who still have needs to fill at running back, potentially at safety, at defensive line, at wide receiver, still holes to fill, but it gives the Broncos these free agency signings that were more aggressive than maybe I naively anticipated that they might be. Gives them a lot more flexibility to where they don't have to pigeonhole themselves into it's got to be a running back in the first round, or it's got to be defensive line here, or it's got to be wide receiver there. There's depth at defensive tackle, and there's depth at running back in this class. In the case of defensive tackle, maybe historic level depth that we haven't seen in a significant length of time. So it opens up options if there is a need or a desire, because it's no longer a need. Now that you've got Evan Ingram in the building for the next couple of years, drafting a tight end in the first round is not a need. So if they really like Colston Loveland and they're not as concerned about the shoulder issue, and he's the guy who was mocked to the Broncos so early on, although that's pivoted naturally since then, if he's there and it's a want, then they feel confident in rounds 2, 3, 4 that they can maybe address defensive line, running back, and wide receiver. Great. But they aren't forced. They're not handcuffed to have to go a certain direction, or they're not at the mercy of, if the board falls a certain way, we're about to burn a draft pick that's going to be very valuable to our production over the next 2 or 3 years. So Charlie, if that's the way the board falls and that's the way it works, sign me up, because I think they've done enough work on the front end that it makes their back end job with the NFL draft a little bit easier. What else we got from Mel? I would pay Bo before his contract ends. Yeah, no, of course. I don't think with Bo Nix that they're going to run this up to the 5th-year option. I don't think Bo Nix is going to play on his 5th-year option. My point is that they have the flexibility to tack the extension onto that, and they have a window without paying Bo Nix that they can front-load contracts to players to put around him, both offensively and defensively, for at least a few years, including this upcoming season, before they really have to start getting in front of the Bo Nix contract. So there's almost like within if we're talking about the rookie quarterback contract window as a window, a singular window, there's kind of like 2 panes to that window. You have the pane we're in right now, where he just finished his rookie season. You probably got 2 more seasons to get him through his junior year in the NFL before when you can really take advantage of him being on a rookie deal, before you have to start turning it. And then a lot of quarterbacks will get paid during that 4th year. And then if there's really question marks, like we've seen with high first-round draft pick quarterbacks in the past, it gets into that 5th-year option territory. But I agree with you, Mel. I don't think it will get to that point where before Bo becomes one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL, assuming his trajectory is where it is. From Drew, if I say if, acknowledged, we get Ingram 805 touchdowns and an 1,000-yard running back, we will be in Super Bowl contention. I put up my projections for Broncos pass catchers as it stands now, assuming they don't add a Tedoroa McMillan or a highly drafted receiver or tight end prospect that's going to figure to be in the mix right away. And I had Evan Ingram right at there around 700, maybe 750 yards. The touchdowns are sticky in terms of projecting, and because they can go so many different directions. But yeah, it's 5 touchdowns would be near near his career performance level. I think his highest touchdowns in a season was 6, and that was his rookie season. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think that's correct, Drew. But if he's at, 700-800 yards and he's got a smattering of touchdowns and Sean Payton's able to move him around in the slot, in line, and utilize the middle of the field to take some pressure off of Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Devon Vele, Troy Franklin, who are more outside operators, I definitely think that in conjunction with a running game, because while I think both of your things there are true in terms of steps to becoming Super Bowl contenders, they've got to fix the running game, man. They have to. If they get what you're saying there and we have the running back output that we had last year, I don't think you can call them Super Bowl contenders because the offense is just too one-sided. And even if that might work through the regular season or in the divisional battle, it will eventually run out of gas in the playoffs like it did against Buffalo. So, Drew, I'm with you. I just think it might need a little extra step there. Bontemps is the clown of all clowns. Now, okay, I actually respect Tim Bontemps, his points of view. At times I don't follow him religiously, but I know he contributes to like the Hoop Collective podcast and some other things. And I don't think he's like an idiot. I just think in this case, it was a lazy attempt at addressing an issue that the NBA has and kind of a convenient way to spread the narrative and smear it across the Denver Nuggets, who in this instance don't deserve it. Are they deserving of some criticism? As I mentioned, yeah. I do think the Nuggets have kind of botched at times their plan and their approach toward resting guys over the slog of an 82-game season. And that's why you got the "we were exhausted" excuse when they got booted off their home floor in a Game 7 against the Minnesota Timberwolves last postseason. So knowing that that's how last postseason ended, I definitely don't feel like they've done the best job at times of trying to correct that narrative. They could have rested their starters against the Wizards, a game that they lost anyways. If you're going to sit Jokic, Christian Brown, and Jamal Murray out for injury reasons, why would you play Aaron Gordon, who's been dealing with more off and on injuries of the lower body variety than anybody on the team, and has been already not playing back-to-backs and trying to find spaces where he can keep things healthy with the postseason just around the corner. So playing Aaron Gordon while sitting everybody else, sitting against the Warriors instead of the Wizards, and people point to the Popovich method of you play your stars against the bad team because you can pick up an easy win in the regular season that has varying levels of importance, and you sit your starters against a good team, as Pop has done over the years, because there's a chance you might lose that game anyways, and then all that effort was for naught. I get that, and that does exist. But again, that's the kind of thing, the timing of the rest and the players that were or weren't rested, if that's what you want to, Tim Bontemps, go after the Nuggets for, great. But don't try to make them the poster child for this NBA load management issue that they neither were a part of at the start and are one of the least reasonable teams to put in that decision, considering Jokic has been available for north of 90% of his nationally televised games over the last handful of seasons. So, Jason, in this instance, I'll give you, it was a little bit of a clown take. Not going to argue with you there. I think we got one more here. I think he should be a regular on your show. I assume you're talking about David Bruton. Yeah, David is great. He's a friend of our station. He does a lot of work with us, and we try to partner with him for some charitable organizations. He has a foundation called Bruton's Books that we do a lot of great work with, and I definitely will keep an eye out for more opportunities to incorporate David onto the show. So thank you, Holy Diver, for that, and thank all of you for joining us today on the final day before the start of the NCAA tournament. March Madness really gets going tomorrow. We got already some excitement in the first 4 games last night. So I appreciate all of you for joining us. Make sure you give us a follow on social media, on YouTube, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at DEN Sports 1043, at Denver Sports 1043. And before I go, I mentioned the 5K bracket challenge. I've mentioned that the last couple of days. There is still time to sign up. This is basically your last day because registrations will stop before the tip-off of the first games, which kicks off right around 10 a.m. tomorrow. So I know many of you, if you haven't already, you're going to cram in some brackets at the last minute here. Why not do it with us? Give yourself a chance to win $5,000. It hasn't been the best of luck for most of us, myself included, in terms of chasing that perfect bracket or a bracket that's not busted by 1 o'clock on Thursday. But you never know if you don't try. I appreciate all of you. You have a wonderful day as well, and we will catch you at the same time and same place tomorrow.
I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put in the work. I only improve